welcome to the second event in a series of Inspire Me events, where we invite external speakers to IBM to motivate us, to give motivational talks. And today our guest is Milan Steskal, who founded his own startup 5 years ago called Mentegram. This is a mental health startup. He also speaks at conferences, organizes workshops on innovations and startups, mentors startuppers, and moreover, he has written a book which will be given away to you, to one lucky person, based on the question that you ask. So don't be anonymous, ask questions, and based on Milan's judgment, you can win the book. As for asking questions, you can ask questions here or on Slido. So if you have mobile or laptop, just go to this link and then enter this code, and you can be anonymous there, but then you won't win the book. What else? And guys, I want to ask you to leave an NPS feedback at the end of the session. Either here, you can put the sticky inside it, or on Slido there is another tab called polls, so you can do that after the session today. And guys, so enjoy the cookies. Cookies are everywhere. This is for you, okay? And enjoy the talk. Welcome, Milan Steskal.
Thank you, Sasha. Because we have to finish at 3, please show me when it's 2:35 to 40, so I know whether I have to speed up or not, or how much time do we have. Before we launched Mentegram, I failed one startup. It was 2012, and yeah, that's me. I had more hair. And in my old pre-startup life, I worked in a small software companies, digital agencies, as a programmer who moved through project manager and product director, and ended up as an entrepreneur. So really, my skill set included building software, managing projects, managing customers, and also I got an opportunity to understand also the business side of it, at least a little bit. And in that, I was pretty good actually. However, I felt like being employed wasn't really what I was born for. It was not exactly something that I really did. It doesn't mean that I'm going to tell you like, hey guys, leave IBM and start your own startup, because many of what I'm going to tell you applies also to working at a company, because it doesn't matter whether it's your own startup or a big company like IBM. You still need to work smart, work hard, and innovate and be really efficient and productive. But back to that failed startup, right? There is a book. Do you guys know or have you heard of a book that's called Lean Startup? It's a big blue book. It's considered a Bible for startups. And I think that every startup founder read it. And of course, I read it as well. And it's pretty straightforward. It explains you what you have to do or how are you supposed to build your startup, both product and business. So I read it, and then I started building my first startup. I built a prototype, and after I left my last job, I used my savings, got on the plane, spent 3 weeks in Silicon Valley with a friend, and honestly, I was hoping that after these 3 weeks, I will get back to Slovakia with an investment. Because my idea was perfect. It was a loyalty program for the restaurants based on QR code. So typical bullshit of 2012. And I loved the idea, and I'm sure that everybody, even in Silicon Valley, would love that idea. Well, I was pretty naive. And when I was there, and few of the investors and mentors and other entrepreneurs gave me the feedback, it was like a cold shower, really. Like I hit the wall, because I understood that everything that I did, even though I was thinking that I did things right, I did things completely wrong. Because I built my prototype, and the prototype itself, it was nice, it was good, and investors liked that. However, that was not enough, because I want to raise money, I want to get investment before I spoke to a single restaurant owner or manager. So when I got back home, I paid a programmer to scrape a directory of all restaurants in Bratislava. And I started calling them one by one. And after I spoke to maybe 50 or 60 managers and met 15 or 20 of them, and was not able to convince a single one to try my app for free, I understood that that the idea is doomed. So it was game over, lesson learned. It cost me some money, but I learned the lesson. And this is really important. That and especially I would say, it feels to me that in this region, and by this region I mean Eastern Europe, post-communist countries, failing is something that people are really, really afraid to do. Doesn't matter whether it's when you work at a company or whether you have your own company or startup. But without failing, you will not learn new things, because if you do not, of course, when you do things, sometimes they do not work out and you fail. But if you do not do new things, you will not do also good things. So this was probably one of the most important lessons that I learned there, and helped me get to where I'm now. As Sasha introduced me, my name is Milan. Actually, my name is also here if you, for some reason, want to write it down. I do not think so, though. And I am a co-founder and CEO of Mentegram. My vision is that every person on Earth deserves access to the mental health care when they need it. That it should not be only for the people who find the courage to see and visit the psychologist or psychiatrist. How we do it with Mentegram is that we optimize the processes and the mental health care, and give all the doctors, also primary care physicians, general practitioners, cardiologists, and anyone else, an opportunity to do a very quick and easy mental health check. Think of something like, when you go to your annual wellness visit and the doctor takes your blood pressure. It's easy as that. So it means that you do not have to build up the courage to go and call the psychiatrist or psychologist and schedule your first session. When you go to your regular doctor that you are used to seeing, that you trust, you fill out a quick, a short form. Mentegram scores it, shows the score to the doctor, and the doctor knows whether you need some further care from a mental health specialist or not. Simple as it goes. Because more than 50% of the people who ever had some kind of mental health issue never receive any care. And that's very, very alarming. Apart from Mentegram, as Sasha mentioned, I really, a lot of people helped me when I was starting with the previous startup or Mentegram, and still a lot of people keep helping me right now. And I realized that in a startup community, and this is what I like about it, I don't know how it works in companies, but I'm sure that it kind of works in IBM as well. There is that paid forward culture, that people keep helping to others without expecting anything back, because they know that it improves the whole community, the whole ecosystem, and ultimately, at some point, it helps them as well. And because a lot of people help me and I enjoy helping others, I like to mentor startups. I run workshops on innovation, startups, how to do things right, how to build really a strong and good foundation for building new products, to make sure that after a few years you do not have to kind of go back and rebuild the foundation, because then it's very, very, very difficult. And as Sasha mentioned, I also write a book. It's here. It's called Idea to Funding, and it's about, well, how to build your startup and how to find investors. And as Sasha mentioned, the one of you whose question I'm going to like the most is going to win it. If it's a small self-promote, the book is available also on Amazon and also as an ebook, so feel free. But as I said, a few copies are here, so if you want it, let me know and ask good questions. So, the first story that I told you about the startup that I failed, right? With that, I learned a lot of lessons, obviously. But one of the biggest lessons that I learned was, and probably the biggest difference between running your own startup and having a job, is that when you have your when you have a job, you usually have your kind of, I don't want to say small, but you have your kind of skill set. You have your responsibility. You have the thing that you are supposed to work on. So, for example, programmers mostly write code. They hate meetings. They hate speaking with the clients. On the other hand, account managers or salespeople, they love talking as much as they can, and they hate tech talk. They don't know what is FTP, what is AWS, what is, I don't know, big data. They only know them as buzzwords. However, when you have your own startup, you have to do everything. As I mentioned, when I started, like my background was in IT and a little bit of business, but when I wanted to move my startup, even the failed one, I had to pick up the phone and start cold calling the restaurants. And honestly, I hate cold calling. I hated it, but I knew that I had to do it, and it put me completely out of my comfort zone. I know that my wife kind of hates this, but getting out of comfort zone, and especially when you are used to build products and kind of being closed in your office, and suddenly you have to start selling and talking to people and talking to customers, it's a bit like seducing women. Because when you go to the bar and there's that girl who you like, it's super hard to go and say hi, right? For most of you, like you would feel that being in a shark tank, escaping from the shark, it's kind of a nicer idea than just going and saying hi to a woman that you like, or also to a man, of course. But that's what we have to get used to. The comfort zone where we are is only a small box when things that we are used to do happen. But when we want to do something else and achieve more, we need to get out. We need to think outside of the box and do new things. And I'm 100% sure that this does not apply only to startups. This applies also to having a job, to being a parent, or anything else. And from this, what I did and why I failed the first startup was that I did not understand my customers at all. And when you are a patient, it doesn't mean that you understand healthcare. And when you are a customer, it means of a restaurant. So when you go to restaurants or to bars, it does not mean that you understand the industry. And that was exactly my fault. I was thinking that I go to restaurants, I go to bars, like I kind of know how it worked, but I totally did not. I did not speak to the managers, to the restaurant owners, and because of that, obviously, my idea was doomed. Because even though I loved the idea, I realized and I learned that the managers and the restaurant owners had completely different problems that they had to solve. So when you work on your startups, and that was also one of the biggest lessons that I learned, is that you really have to solve problems that really exist, that your target audience, that people really have. And usually you cannot understand what the problems are if you do not speak to these people, to these customers. So when my co-founder, Igor, had the idea of Mentegram, Igor is the one of our team who has got mental health background. So we as the founders, we understand the industry. We didn't start in the same way how I started the first startup. We did not start with building the prototype. Even though Igor, he did not have any experience because he came from the academic background, he wanted to do it. But instead of building the prototype, what we did was that actually mostly Igor, because he lived in the United States, he interviewed 60 or 70 psychologists and therapists, and he spoke with them about our idea, about what we wanted to do, about the problem that we wanted to resolve. Of course, we could have done that better, but that's not the point. And only after we got interest from these people, only then we started building the prototype. And now, small break. Do you guys know where this is? If anyone guesses right, it's gonna be a book for the person. All right, I'll give you a few hints. If anyone gets the idea, Sasha, you know, so you so you cannot so you're out. If anyone knows, just shout it, and we'll see. So I said that you have to be where your customers are, and that Igor was in the United States. He lived in Austin, Texas, and of course, our CTO, it's Igor and our CTO on the picture. We traveled to the United States because we had to meet our customers, we had to meet our partners, and because that's how we could talk to them and understand these kind of their problems. So, Austin, Texas. Sorry?
It's IBM Office.
Yes. It's a book for you. Yeah, so this is an IBM campus in Austin, Texas. I don't know how exactly like do they approach startups right now, but when we were there, it was 2 or 3 years ago. They were trying really hard and put a lot of effort into kind of plugging into the startup ecosystem, at least in Austin and Texas area. So I told you I knew that at least someone would recognize it. However, you know, because we managed to get investors and because we needed to be where our customers are, and because I was in charge of business, I had to travel a lot. To be honest, when I kind of think of it, it looks really super amazing because in the past 4 or 5 years, I did a lot of business trips to the United States, whether it was New York, Atlanta, Austin, Silicon Valley, Chicago, DC. But after quite some time, it can really, it's not only, rainbows and unicorns. Because when you travel a lot, it really gets tiring. I'm out of home, I don't spend that much time with my wife. But, you can handle it because you see the goal. So really, being there with our customers and speaking to our customers about the problems that they have, about how Mentegram keeps helping them and what can we do better, is what helped us build Mentegram, how Mentegram is right now. To be honest, some of the features that we have, it feels like we've had them forever, like since the very beginning, since the launch. But then when I think of it, when we really launched Mentegram, it was something like a prototype with a nice user interface. And since then, maybe 90% of the features, maybe even more, that we built came from our users and from our customers. Because we talked to them, we asked them about what they need, how they work. We had to understand, my background is not in mental health at all, but now after having spent 5 years on Mentegram, I understand quite well how psychologists work, how psychiatrists work. Of course, I cannot treat any people, obviously, but now I feel I'm pretty confident that I understand the industry and I understand also the incentives and motivations of all the stakeholders involved, because it's not only one-on-one relationship, because when we sell something to the psychologist or psychiatrist, it's not only them using it, it's also their staff using it, it's also patients using it. Then also health insurance companies are usually involved, and the management of the hospital or the clinic. And without understanding this, you cannot be successful. And thanks to the fact that I really traveled a lot, that helped me understand. And right now, I feel that I understand American healthcare actually better than Slovakian one, which feels kind of strange. Some of the features, that we built did not feel like, or let me put it this way: what you are going to see on the next slide. And when I show the slide, I will not comment it. I'll let you look at it for a little bit. That's how we approached Mentegram, and that's what allowed us to get to the stage that right now we haven't added any significant feature to our software since summer last year. because we just did not have to. We can, of course, you can build things and add new features, but one of the things that you learn as a startup is to prioritize, to not to do things and work that you really do not need to, because your resources are pretty limited, and you value your free time. And the approach that we'll see, that's what helped us get there. I think that it's pretty self-explanatory and it does not need any comments. Okay, I think if you have any questions, raise your hand and ask, of course, but I think that it's clear, right? All right. This is one of my most favorite stories actually from Mentegram, and it's about what do you consider luck. Many people asked me, how did we manage to expand to Australia? And when I tell you how it happened, you may think that it was luck. Because during one of my trips to the United States, it was almost 2 years ago, I received an email from the contact form on our website. It was from this guy, and he was like, in a short, like, hey, I like what you are doing. I see an opportunity for this in Australia. I want to sell your software in Australia. And it was not the first email like that. I received such emails from time to time. Of course, I replied to every single of these emails, but usually these emails were like kind of spam, so I did not really expect much of it and much from this guy. However, he replied back really quickly. We scheduled a phone call. We spoke together. 2 or 3 weeks later, we met in Austin, Texas. So he actually flew from Melbourne to Austin, Texas, just to meet us and to see whether it's gonna be also a personal fit between us, whether we could work together. And that's how he showed us that he was serious about it. And of course, we really liked each other. So fast forward to today, we've been working with Vikas for 2 years, and Australia is our biggest market. And now I will ask you, and just raise your hands. Was it luck or not? Who thinks that it was luck? Ah. Okay, so we all think that it was not luck. This is the email that he sent us. If you want, like I'll give you 30 seconds to read it. So you see, it's really very short email. Nothing special. Nothing serious. But what we were really doing. This happened 2 years after we've launched Mentegram. And since the very beginning, we were about measuring outcomes, improving outcomes, outcome measures, increasing the health productivity of healthcare, and things like this. And we were building some kind of foundation or framework, not only from the software perspective, but also from the marketing and PR perspective. So we made sure that we worked also on the SEO, search engine optimization, that we would be found. And when I spoke to Vikas then, what he said was that he was, because he is a mental health consultant, and he's been working in mental health field in Australia for 10 to 15 years, and he understood that this is something that has a potential in Australia. So he started, he opened Google and started searching. He was doing his own research to see whether something like that exists, and when he found Mentegram, he decided to reach out to us instead of building a new software and kind of reinventing the wheel. So from my perspective, I do not see this as luck, because all that we were doing was, but I'm sure that you kind of raised your hand only because there was nobody else. We wanted to be found. Our website and what we were doing with our website was to attract the potential customers and the potential partners like he was. Of course that we do not get a partner like him every week or every month, because it may be, only a few patterns like that in the whole lifetime of a company. But how I see it was that there was an opportunity, and we were prepared for the opportunity. Of course, sometimes in life there's also luck, but luck is something that we kind of cannot really affect. We cannot do anything with it, with luck or bad luck. Like if there is a, I don't know, asteroid like hits this building, what can we do with it? Nothing, right? But if we can see that something was going there, we can really run out of the building. And this is how I kind of see it. And again, doesn't matter whether it's startups or a company. When you see an opportunity, you have to walk with your eyes open and kind of grab the opportunity when the opportunity is there. And I'm sure that also here in IBM, it's a lot of opportunity for everyone. You do not have to, tomorrow go like, hey, Milan was talking about the opportunities. I'm gonna build that startup that I've been kind of thinking of. And the last story, the one story before last, is about the most important things in a startup, but again, also in a company. And what do you think it is in a startup? Is it investors? Or maybe the idea? Or is it the product? I would say the second, because there is someone who has to drink the beer. And the most important thing in a startup, or thing doesn't sound really correct, is the team. Because the team, there's a saying that 1% of a startup success is the idea and 99% is about the execution. And the team is the one who executes the idea. So even if the idea is not really good, a really very good team can work somehow with the idea and make it a decent business. But with a shitty team, even the best idea in the world is doomed. That's why there have been so many social networks, but only one winner, like Facebook. There's been so many search engines. There's only one winner, Google, because these people knew how to execute and knew how to and were very, very good at execution and delivering. And what I would say that is a really good thing about this is that good team does not need ultimately a lot of time to to deliver things and to execute, because this actually that the picture on the right from your side, it's from the IBM building, because IBM organized a hackathon in a healthcare hackathon. So we went there and we used it to build one small feature, but a feature that some of our potential customers kind of were talking and were asking to have it. And we have been trying really hard to get these customers on board, or get these potential customers on board, for months. After we built a prototype, and it took us 2 days, 1 weekend, it took us only a few weeks to get these customers on board. And actually, that small hackathon, like a small effort of three guys from Slovakia, changed kind of, or set the new direction for the company. Not from the product perspective, because the product did not change that much, but the small new feature changed the value proposition, changed how the people started looking at our business and at what we were doing. The flyer or that the guys built for this event or this talk, it was saying that it will kind of learn, and that I will tell you how does a life of a startup CEO look like. And there is no perfect one image to show that. But I like Star Wars, and I understand that many of you really know Star Wars. And I use this one because sometimes being a startup founder feels like being Luke Skywalker, but sometimes it feels like Yoda, which is kind of, from some perspective, the same, but from some perspective, exactly the opposite. Personally, I feel more often like Luke Skywalker, because he was a guy who was very good at some things, but But Obi-Wan Kenobi, he opened a whole new world for him that Luke did not know anything about. He had to find his mentor, who was Yoda, and practice and practice and fail and fail and practice and fail again. And this is exactly what you do with startups. When you are a developer and you start and you have to start meeting people and selling or doing marketing or even doing design when all you can do is the kind of sticky guy. Um, that's something that you have to go through. On the other hand, when your startup grows a little bit, you also need to be like Yoda because you have your own colleagues. You have to lead them. You have to lead them by example. You cannot be a boss like saying like do this, do this. You have to show them, and you have to mentor them. And all of this feels like you are on a roller coaster. There are a lot of ups. There are a lot of downs. Like you raise money from an investor, but the potential customer does not want to use your product. You hire a good person, and then when you get a new customer, and doing training, the server is down. You lose a customer, then there is and on the same day, there is an article in Forbes that mentions it. It's like emotional, financial roller coaster, and as the company grows bigger, the roller coaster also grows bigger. Like it feels like you start on a small one on a local fair and end up in Six Flags or somewhere, on the biggest roller coaster that is out there. And of course, for many people, roller coasters are fun, right? But usually when it's only one or two rides. But think of riding a roller coaster like for days without any stop. Like you would get sick. Does not matter how good you are, you would get sick. And this is what brings me to the last story, which is a bit more personal because to be honest, this roller coaster is extremely hard. And since we founded Mentegram and since we started, it's been two times when I avoided a serious burnout, and I would say that it's mostly because I've been working on a mental health startup. I was able to recognize the early symptoms and to do something with it. If it was not Mentegram or working on mental health, I'm pretty sure that at least once out of these two possible burnouts, I would really burn out. How I recognized it, what I did. One of the first symptoms is that you do not feel the joy of doing things that you felt doing before, either whether it's personal life or whether it's work. I've been working a lot. I did not see any positive outcomes. It was happening for 4 or 5 months, and I started feeling that it doesn't make sense what I was doing. Fortunately, it was summer, and during the summer months, you cannot do real business, you cannot really raise money. So I limited my work to the very minimum for 2 or 3 months. I kind of recovered. We raised more money, we got new customers, I got new energy. When it happened the second time, it was quite similar. It was a bit over a year ago, but it kind of hit me more because it was deeper. But at the same time, I met a friend who went through like serious trouble, like much more serious than a burning out from being overworked or something. And so I was like, okay, why don't you give me a contact to your psychologist? I called her. I scheduled an appointment. Definitely one of the top 10 decisions I've ever made in my life. Because I understood, also thanks to Mentegram, how important it is, how mental health and poor mental health really affects not only our personal life, but our professional life, and also all the people around us. And that's why I try to become a mental health ambassador. When I get a chance, I raise the issue up. I try to fight the stigma and help people find ways to get the help that they really require. This was my story. The time is about right, so thank you. And now let's go to your questions. Should we start with Slido or should we start with raising hands?
Let's alternate. One question from here, one from Slido. We have 4 questions in Slido.
4 questions in Slido. All right, so let me switch to Slido.
5. But we have just 20 minutes. So.
Okay, so let's go one by one. How do you measure satisfaction of your customers? How do you collect feedback? It's a great question. What we usually do is that we do one-on-one interviews. We do not have any kind of system with a or scoring system where we ask them to rate how good Mentegram is and whether they would recommend it to their colleagues. We prefer one-on-one conversation, even though it takes more time, because that's how we better understand what are their real problems and how we can help them.
Yes, if you can do the one-on-ones, so how many customers do you have?
I cannot say the exact number, but what I can say is that there have been hundreds of doctors and thousands of patients that have used Mentegram.
And you have time to do the one-on-ones.
Well, of course, we do not do it with every clinician.
Just
We do not reach out to patients because we consider reaching out to patients. It's very personal, and we don't want the patients feel that there is a third party between the patient and the clinician, because the mental health it's very sensitive.
yeah, so just
We speak with the doctors, and we usually pick the ones who use Mentegram the most, and then the ones who do not use it that much to kind of learn what works and what did not. Of course. Okay, our question. Do you have developers in your company? How many employees there are? Yes, we do have developers in our company. As a startup, we learned to become very, very efficient, and as of today, we have 2 developers. And as I mentioned, like, we did not have to build any new features since the summer last year. So right now, both developers are external. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to hold them in our company and didn't give them an opportunity to do what they. I don't want to say what they want, because they wanted to work also on Mentegram, but it just did not make that much sense for them. Like, their work would not have such a big impact right now. So right now, they are available if we need anything. They do work for us, but they also have an opportunity to work on their own products or own projects. And altogether, it's 6 people in our company. So we are quite a small company because we mostly handle business. We do not have to, we do not need any testers, any developers, any big production team right now.
Do we have a question from here so that people don't need to enter?
Yes.
Who was your investors?
Our investor is Milan Ventures. Is the venture capital company from Slovakia, led by Ivan Štefunko, who turned to politics and started Progresívne Slovensko. I feel like that many of you heard about them.
And how you found them?
This is a great question, and this is actually the question that I get almost every time, and that's what brought me to writing this book. But in general, the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Slovakia is quite small. So after having spent some time, it's kind of everybody knows everybody. So I had known them before I approached them with this idea, because I knew that they were investors. And how I approached them, actually, it was not asking for money, but just asking for feedback on my idea or on our idea that we have. Because there is a saying, and actually it sounds super cheesy, but it's true. Like, when you ask investors for money, they usually give you an advice. And when you ask for an advice, it's much more likely that they give you money. And we got money this way. Why mental health idea intrigued you to build a company around? This is a great question. Anybody from here asked it? No. Okay. Igor, my co-founder, he's been a friend of mine since the childhood. He was my brother's best friend when they were like 8 or 10 years old. And when he mentioned his idea, I kind of, he sold his idea so well that I was immediately hooked on. It feels like after he pitched me his idea, and after speaking for maybe 1 hour, I was like, okay, Igor, let's do it 50-50. We'll make a company out of this idea. And why? Now I look completely different at how I looked back then, because back then it was just a new opportunity for me. Like, when we started working on that, it was like, okay, this is going to be my full-time job for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. But as I started learning more about mental health, I realized that it's so important to help people who have issues, and only based on the statistics. Like, if I do like line like here, for example, like all of you there it's likely that you guys would have some kind of mental health issue, because it's really 1 in 4 adults suffers from some mental health condition or has some issues. And and these people, and we need help. So this is why I like that. All right, Sashi, I think that you can kind of mark the questions as answered, because now it's 9 questions. And if I suffer from mental health illness, how can Mentegram help me? Can you explain the connection between the patient and doctor? Of course, that's a very good question. Mentegram cannot help you without getting help from the clinician or therapist or provider. Because what Mentegram does is that we automate and digitize the workflow. How it works is that when the doctor, for example, needs to test you whether you have a depression, they give you a questionnaire or a form on paper. You answer questions, they score it, and that gives them the basic idea of the diagnosis. You may be surprised, even in 2018, this happens mostly on paper, and we digitize it. So I do not want to kind of reduce value of what we do, but if you think of Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, that fits exactly the needs and the workflows of mental health care, that's what Mentegram is. So for the clinicians, it's a way to give patients the assessments, the tests, or even giving them their treatment plan, like reminding them to do something. And for the patients, it's forms and reminders. Are you happy with your cloud service provider? Yes, we are. What do you think is important to keep a team happy? That's a very good question. And however, not easy to answer, but because everyone is different, and it really depends. It really depends on the team. But for me, as the founder, like, what I do is that I try to. My goal is to understand the people and understand what they need. If they need, if they need more freedom, to give them more freedom. If they need to be if they need more hand-holding, I would give them hand-holding. I think that the communication is the most important, and when you understand what the team needs, then you can make them happy. And it really depends on the particular people. But in general, nobody really likes a kind of angry boss that is not fair. What methods have you used for user research? Another very good question. And we mostly did one-on-one interviews. And when we started, like, I like using 3 questions when I'm validating an idea. I do not pitch the product that I'm working on, but what I do is that the first question that I ask is like, what's your problem with? And that with something is something from the topic, from the area where I have my project. That way, I learned what are the real problems of these people. Then I ask the people, like, how often do they have the problem and how do they resolve it right now. Based on that answer, they tell me, I understand how big is the problem, and whether it's easy or not for these people to resolve the problem. So in general, if it makes sense for me to solve this problem or not. And the third question that I like the most is like, if you had a magic wand, what would you do to resolve the problem? And if you omit, the answers like I would just fix it, these people usually tell you the solution that would work the best for them. So based on these three questions, you can even start a new product, whether it's a startup or a new in-house project here at IBM, even without having your own idea. Because I can ask you like, guys, what is the most complicated for you to organize, this event? You would say something. And I ask you like, how often, how big? And based on this, I would be, okay, like it's a big problem. They have an ideal solution. I will do it. So this is my favorite kind of user research. Any question from here?
Do you have in your team some professional people who are working on user research, or when you do the research, you just intuitively what you are going to ask them, how you will do it?
We usually use these two questions, and after, this is like in startup and in what we do not need kind of postdoc in user research. Like we do not need to go to that deep because we need to understand really what the problem is. So I would say that these three questions cover maybe 50%. And then based on these questions, when we meet our customers and our users, we ask questions like, how do you use Mentegram? Describe it, what works, what doesn't work, what would help you, and things like this. And we mostly ask questions and listen. We do not talk too much.
And one more question.
Of course.
So once you get this feedback and you create some kind of feature based on the feedback, you go back to them to verify, or you just
when we build a feature that they asked, we let them know like, hey, this feature has been
expected.
And usually it is. Anyone else? Yes.
Is there a lot of big companies that they like to buy your application to be detected?
Do you mean like to acquire the whole company?
Like people that have money, but either start from scratch on something else or not to work at all. Like if you have this baby approach, or if you build one.
When you have a startup, and especially when you have investors, there will always be a day that you either completely fail or you sell the company, because the investors, they need kind of their money back and their profit back, and it's usually when somebody acquires you. So
there is not like a big potential in startups that they will eventually grow into such a
well there is, because when startups can also do an IPO and go public, and that's how the investors get the money back. But usually, if it's a startup with a big potential, it's a lot of big companies trying to acquire the startup before they even get a chance to do the IPO, and usually the offers are so kind of sweet and big that it's very hard to say no. Like if I get a really nice and big offer from someone, I would very likely say yes. Of course.
Would you think about starting something new one, or rather not?
Well, I would definitely relax for quite some time, but I'm pretty sure that I will start something new, because like what would I do for the rest of my life?
I know, but like start up again or something like on your own.
Probably. But one thing that startups have taught me is that like you cannot really plan 3 or 5 years ahead. So I would.
It's about like how
It's I will see how things are gonna work out. Okay. If you had to step out of your comfort zone when starting the company, what was the one thing that made you do that? Awesome question. Anyone from here? Okay, you will get a book. The feeling and understanding that if I do not do it, and if I do not get out of my comfort zone, I'll be on the same place. Kind of, if you keep doing the same things, you will keep getting the same shit. And realizing this, because when you have a job, it's usually programmers and scrum masters, project managers, account managers, HR people, and each has their own responsibility, and they do their own job. So a developer does not have to handle human relations or sales, and the salesperson doesn't have to do support when the server goes down. But when you have your own startup, you have to do whatever is needed, because except from the founders, there is no one else to do it. And realizing this was the fact that made me call these 100 restaurants, even though I still hate cold calling. But if I had to, I would do it. Any more questions? No. So in that case, I thank you very much. I hope that it inspired you, that it's gonna help you in growing your career at IBM. Because it says like founders and entrepreneurship, but there is also an intrapreneurship, and I believe that IBM is one of the companies that gives that opportunity. So why not? Okay, thank you very much.